we'll get underway. And I'll just note that we've got the news media in the room and we're being live streamed, and we've got talent on Zoom. So I'll ask Councillor Pakipaki to open karakia, please.
Tēnei tēnei nui ki a koutou, tēnei wai tēnei hui, ka tangi au he karakia. Timata mo te hui o tēnei rā. Whakatakata hau ki te uru, whakatakata hau ki te tonga. Kia mā kina ki uta, kia mā tara ki tai. E hi ake ana te ata kura, he te o he hoka, he hau ngā haumi e hui e, tai ki aki.
Thank you. So we've got no apologies, and I note Phil Ruffles in the room today. Welcome, Phil. I used to see you 15 years ago at Brightweather Task Force meetings, so obviously we've been around too long, maybe some of us. And I've seen Philip Wilson in the last 2 weeks recently, so I'm sure he'll be here later because the traffic's normally worse on a wet day. But it wasn't, I came in early, it wasn't too bad. It's only 30 minutes from Richmond. So we've got no formal apologies. Order of business is, there's only one report. We did have somebody wanting to talk in public forum, but she was actually wanting to talk about waste minimisation, which was Nathan's other hat, and Motueka wastewater. So that's a TDC hat, so it wasn't for us. Confirmation of the minutes. So would someone like to move that the minutes of the meeting held on the 1st of September are true and correct record? Move Councillor Skinner, seconded Councillor Dowler. I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. And we'll now move to the manager's report, and I think it's in your name, Nathan, but I'm sure that Brad did most of the work for it because you were away.
Through the chair, yeah, thank you to Brad for looking after NRSB while I was away. He did a good job. Many thanks to him. The report actually was largely prepared by me. Obviously, he told me what to write. So everything is running pretty smoothly at NRSBU. Contract, the operations contract has been running smoothly. We have had a couple of incidences, and we did have one overflow which related to a corroded fitting in our pump stations. In our air valve chambers. It appears that two types of dissimilar metal are in contact, and it's corroded the joint between them, and essentially the thing popped off. So we've gone around now and we've got a program work to go around and replace all the things that are in a similar situation. So it was a bit unexpected failure. And we also had one odour notification during the period, which is not too bad. It was thought to have come from the biosolids facility on Motorola Rabbit Island. In terms of the repair of that overflow, it happened quickly. We had to shut down the bulk of the rising main facility to do it because we have no backups and that element will be resolved with the new duplication program when it's finished. So it's a good thing to know. In terms of the overarching finances, things have been going well at the operational level. We're slightly over budget at the present time. We're expecting that to sort of come back towards budget at the end of the second quarter. Where things haven't been going quite so well is in our fixed costs in our program, and so we have the fixed costs for the contribution to the scheme. And again, and interest and depreciation also have gone against us. And looking at what has occurred, what's happened is when we wrote our business plan, we had an interest rate in the business plan, and then in the intervening time between the business plan writing and when we've essentially started the financial year, the numbers have gone down. We've adjusted it, and then at the start of the year we adjusted again. And the problem is that adjustment's come back up. So we actually got the thing, and the business plan when we finalised it was different to the start of the year number. So the implication is that this trend will carry on for the rest of the year because we've actually locked in a rate that's dissimilar to the rate that we're actually exposing ourselves to in the interest rate at the moment. And that basically goes back to the contributors' fixed contribution and also to the interest and depreciation, well, particularly the interest. Yeah. And if you want any more detail,
Well,
Andrew can talk to you.
Well, I
about
thought
that.
we should explore this just now. So what I would be interested in, and I'm sure others will be, what difference does it make for the two owners and the two councils? And then secondly, what difference does it make for our major contributors being the Freezing Works and Nelson Pine? So those are the big two questions I'll be asking, because I know both councils are working through their 10-year plans now, and pan charges, how they're paid for in Tasman. I think it's slightly different in Nelson City, but in Tasman it's a pan charge per pan connected to the system. So Andrew.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So there's two things that are going on here. One is the expense that the regional sewerage is exposed to for interest. The interest rates have moved from when the the budget was done, because we have to do it so far in ahead, and consequently our interest cost is going to be higher. The loans are funded from the two councils, so
That's a fine, yeah.
That's definitely a fine. That's definitely a fine. Your phone going off.
Oh, God.
and now I've lost my train of thought.
Yeah, that was a significant.
That's a bad one.
So the two councils receive the interest we pay. So our expense goes to the two councils, but their costs have gone up, so it just reflects what they're having to pay as well. In the recovery model that we charge the four major customers, there's an agreed recovery model, and there's a portion of it which is fixed, and it's the larger portion which relates to return on capital and depreciation. The depreciation's not too dissimilar for budget, but the interest charge in that, because we use the interest rate at the 30th of June, applying at the 30th of June in that recovery model. So we're recovering from the four main customers a return on investment based on the interest cost at that point in time. So that means that because that is higher than what was budgeted, that means we charge our four customers more. For the industries, it's not too much, because a lot of the weighting between the industry and councils is the industries are more load factored, and so they pay a higher proportion of the operational costs than they do of the fixed costs, which are capital related, and a lot of that's to do with the pipes and the pump stations. It's just a weighting. They do pay both pay both. So there's slight difference. The result of the increased charges that hit the two councils comes to us, and we use it to pay interest on our loans and make a surplus, which then goes back to the two councils, which is often forgotten because the focus is on operating expenses. So the net effect is we get a wee bit more from industry than what was budgeted.
So a question for the two engineers from the two councils. Does it affect your charges? In effect, so you might pay a bit more one way, but then you get more back. So does it, going forward, Mike, does it make a difference on your pan charge? Yeah.
Through the chair, the effect at the end of the year, if we're running at a deficit on the contribution or the fixed charge contribution, is that the surplus would be lower to the councils, and therefore that they would essentially not get the amount of money they were expecting their budget. It would therefore, affect their budgets. They'd be running at a deficit also for that particular payment.
Okay. Any other questions on the finance? It's always something I think is important to explain so that people understand it.
Through the chair, I have just observation on the expenditure. The narrative in the expenditure section or the finances section says the interest was 167K over budget. The table presented, the excerpt of the table presented, I think it shows 162. Is it? I think it's a typo.
Through the chair, good spotting, tell it, and it'll be a typo on my behalf. I'm sorry. We were running quite quickly to get the numbers for the report. There is a possibility there was some minor adjustment between the time I wrote the report and the time we put the table in here, but my apologies.
Sure, I understand that. Thanks.
All right. Well, if you want to carry on, Nathan.
Through the chair, in terms of projects, the regional pipeline upgrade is going well. We have the section at Martin Point is now being, the connection of the various sections of Martin Point has been completed. We're expecting Hunter Civil to start 1 to 4 soonish next week. There we go. And the sections 6 and 7 through Kotoa Place, and they are on track, maybe a week or two behind. We've had to change the program to allow for cyclists and not interfering with cyclists down the railway reserve section beside Bunnings, just to try and streamline that from a public interference sort of perspective. But otherwise, it's all pretty much on track. We did come across an 1870s rail bridge abutment in Orphanage Creek, so that we had an archaeological assessment done on that, and we're just adjusting the route of the pipe to go around the abutment. So it wasn't known to be there. It wasn't visible when we started the alignment search, and when we started doing some digging, we found it. So it's just a matter of getting people in to look at it, and it's big enough that, and probably significant enough, that we chose to reroute the pipe around it. Otherwise, most things, as I say, have been going well. The Rabbit Island resource consent is essentially complete. Everything's been agreed. I don't know, have we actually seen the document? No. We had a couple of one thing at NRSBU at the Bell Island plant that was a little bit of a concern, where we inspected a number of the handrails on our ATAD system, and we found some handrails that were quite corroded. They're only corroded in one particular section. It was a joint between the base and the handrail itself, which is obviously a bit of a problem. It's the wrong spot. So we've had a program of going through that and replacing that. No. So that was one of those maintenance program maintenance things we're doing to inspect them, and identified that. So that was good. Bunch of work program for this coming summer in terms of the inlet works and replacing some of the corroded concrete in that. But as I say, that's everything's going well. There was one other thing that has been negative, and we'll have to, is that one of our other screens has suffered some cracking, so on the drum, and so we've ordered a new drum. We will have to try and keep the current screen running effectively by ongoing repair until that one gets there. When we get the new one there, we'll pull it out and we'll rebuild the second one and then replace. So we've got essentially a spare sitting in stock at that point.
So we've got a question from Councillor Paki, and then I've got one.
I guess, goes through the chair. That was one of the things that I picked up through the report, and it's appeared on both of the two drums. I'm just asking a question about, you're talking about it being rebuilt. It looks like there's some sort of fault, design fault in there. So if it's recurring, so
we have had the finite element analysis done on it and trying to understand what's failed, and so there'll be some modifications made to the screen when it's rebuilt to increase the strength of those required areas. So That being said, the long-term plan is to do some additional screening in the chamber for more capacity once the upgrade of the pipeline and stuff is done. At that point, we would consider whether the technology is the right technology. Any new screens, we'd be very careful about what we did. But at the moment, we're in a situation we really pretty much need to keep on going with what we've got while we do those changes, for the future.
All right, I've got one other question, and tell it. I've only got you on a little screen on the computer in front of me, whereas we have a bigger one behind. So tell it. You had a question for Nathan?
Yes, I have a question on the same subject. That's why I raised my hand, and it's more kind of strategic. Through the chair, we've seen in the report those two incidents. One was the overflow, and this on inspection and maybe preliminary assessment showed a corroded kind of fitting. So let's not talk about what was the cause of it. I'm talking about the corrosion, and then the other one was the inspection, and I'm not sure what led to this inspection of the inlet screen, where they found the rotary drum cracking. And then there was one more note in the report about the concrete condition. So my question is, it all seems reactive kind of approach to the issues. I'm looking, or I'm expecting to see more kind of proactive approach to asset management in particular. And also I've noted in the finances that our depreciation is more than what we spend in terms of the planned and reactive maintenance, like 3 million versus 2 million. So I'm just asking, what's the approach, and is there a need for a comprehensive scanning / condition assessment so that we can refresh our asset management planning? Thanks.
Through the chair, it's a really great question, and there are, I guess, two elements to the question. One is if you talk about the corrosion in the pipework, one of the problems we've got with the pipework is we simply can't take it out of service to inspect it at the present time. So the proactive asset management is to duplicate and to create the ability to take it out of service to do effective inspections on it. So we are in a position where that is occurring, and we're getting toward getting close to the time where we'll have the sufficient capacity and or alternative routes to be able to take individual sections out and do inspections. The failure that did occur on that one was in a reasonably minor part, but it wasn't known, and so that was that is a concern. In terms of the inlet, the inspection on the screen, that was a regular inspection. We do it frequently. The failure of that particular unit wasn't, it's not unexpected because we've seen it before, but we didn't have a spare on hand. Essentially, we were running with it and re-welding the previous one. So the fact that we are now seeing both of them having some issues is why we're reacting to that in the way. The handrails, when I talked about corrosion, the handrails, that essentially was an asset management activity. We went around and inspected the handrails to inspect their condition from a safety and an asset management perspective. We actually, in order to do that, we had to cut some handrails off to do some inspections on them, and that's when we identified this corrosion in the base, which is why we've found it. It wasn't visible from the outside. So I think we do have some good proactive asset management in that. On the concrete corrosion in the inlet structure, that is again a known issue. It's been on our program for some time. We haven't, this year is the time where we've programmed to replace that material. It's taken some time to get an effective design through from our consultants. In terms of the budget for renewals, we have underspent the budget for renewals intentionally, and it's not intentionally on maintenance activities for small items. It's on our major aeration system, and that's a significant amount of money. We carried over money from a previous year to this year to give us essentially enough money to do a bigger upgrade on it, and so that's why you've seen an underspend on that depreciation. That's a significant number. Essentially, it's a renewal of a large element of the treatment facility. So,
Okay, Councillor Pakapaki.
Yeah, through the chair. I had three other really good questions, but the first one's been answered, and the other two have now been made obsolete. But just talking about the item that was picked up about the incompatibility of obviously some ferrous table issues with some components. How extensive do you think that is? Have you looked into that very far? So at this stage,
can you repeat the key piece, which was the jargon that I didn't quite get? Sorry.
Oh, sorry. The ferrous table,
right.
The metal compatibilities.
Yeah. I don't know specifically off the top of my head. I don't expect it to be extensive, but that doesn't mean that it ultimately comes down to when someone actually built it. Did they follow the design effectively? And so it's very hard when you look at the plans to know whether that's the same. In terms of the same situation and the same device in the same situation, then we had 3 other locations for that. And so it's easy for us to go and inspect and deal with those 3 other locations that we expect to be the same. But what we don't know is whether this is more symptomatic of, or when people built that facility, whether they did, actually take the care that they were meant to and have the isolation between those materials.
Yeah, the first thing that popped into my head was obviously that is this a systematic problem right through the through the whole. That's something that's part of this program. So we know that we've got fittings that are 3 extra ones that are in the same situation are likely to be suffering the same event, but we'll go and examine the other ones that are similar but not the same and see whether they are suffering as well. So the initial thing is replace all those ones that are expected to be suffering the same issue, and then go and investigate to see whether we can identify locations where it could be a problem as well. Yeah. I don't know, Brad, do you want to offer anything extra? No.
Right. From that, in terms of renewals, Nathan, I'm thinking of I think it's Saxon Creek, Sewerage Estate, where the big Nelson City project's going through, and we had to wait till it got to a certain section till we could go through there, as I understand it. And I see more progress has been made, and it should be only about 3 months away from being finished, Alan.
Yeah, through the chair, we will substantially be finished by the end of the year, and then there still remains the issue of planting, cleaning up, planting as in greenery plants, cleaning up, and then with a project that size, there's always a substantial cleanup, especially with the Christmas season. So by and large, all finished. So and that's great. And yes, we will be removing the throttle.
Yeah. So does that mean that we'll be able to do our bit? Because we had to work around them, didn't we, or go over the top?
Thank you. Through the chair, we've been advised that practical completion for the Saxon Creek is in early January, and that's at the moment at least a month before our program works to get into that particular section. So there's no concerns in terms of timing from us at this point.
Because that was one of the last bits, as I understand it, in that location.
So the remaining pieces of that are essentially the connections at the pump stations, which are where we have to connect the Saxons Road pump station through into the pipework itself. We'll build all the pipework, and then we've got to do the cut-ins of that pipework into the systems.
That's good to get that done, and it was great that you got someone else to pay for it as well. Central government, same people, different river taxpayers.
So that's essentially that's my summary of my report. There's nothing I think that is really significant. Obviously, the screening things is undesirable. We'd like to have not had that issue whether both screens have got cracking, but we believe we'll be able to manage an ongoing maintenance program as we in the meantime. But
so that, if you will, sorry, that just brings up the thought about Can you just describe for me, because I don't know whether you have an ebb and flow of processing and whether certain times of the year are more extensive. I think in the report it mentioned that there's a 14-week wait on the drum arriving, and I'm guessing there'll be temporary repairs just done to get things through. Where is the peak times? Do you have peak times? Or
Yeah, well, through the chair,
I do recall someone saying it's also somewhat related to rain.
absolutely, yeah.
Weather events.
So what we have is, there's a range of different peaks in wastewater. There's a daily peak. So in the morning, you get more after everybody's gone to the loo and had a shower of them getting up to go for work. Obviously, so the peak sort of comes up and then goes back down a little bit. And then the evening one, and then comes off. So between 1 a.m. and 5 a.m., you get very little, about 100 litres a second. During the peak of the day, you get 200 or 250 litres a second. So it's 2.5 times. In a rainfall event, compared to a dry weather event, we can see up to 5 or even 6 times the amount of flow coming in. So if we don't have any significant rainfall events, we only generally need one screen running. And then in a rainfall event, we'd actually have both screens running. And our long-term plan is to actually have move to an N+1. So we'd actually have 2 screens that could do all of that flow, but have one spare as well. We simply don't have that at the moment, but that's part of the plan for the future.
So if we ignore the weather outside at the moment,
yep.
it's probably better that it's actually at this time of the year than it would be like in the
August,
winter.
September would be the worst time generally for us. We'd have a higher rainfall and more intense rainfall. The ground stays wetter, so we'd have more inflow and infiltration during that period. Yeah.
Whenever you talk about screens, it gets me nervous because of our experience in Motueka and screens not meeting spec. From day one.
Yeah, well, this, I assume it's a different set of screens. I think there's essentially the ultrafill, the filter, the membrane microfiltration ones, whereas here we're talking about ones that take out, panty shields and rag and condoms and all those sorts of things that come down someone's false teeth that all come down the sewer. And, the things that are in the waste. Sorry.
Yeah. We'll let Mike make a comment.
Yeah, through the chair. Now, we did have issues with our screens until we duplicated them.
Okay.
So now we've actually got 2 trains and we can shut down one for maintenance. Right. It's made a huge difference.
Yeah.
That's good to know. Right. So very short meeting today. So that's your report. Is there any other questions of either Nathan, Brad, or Andrew?
I have few other questions if I can ask.
Yep.
Thanks. 2 quick questions and then I will ask 2 other individually. I'm keen to know, because the report doesn't say an issue which we were facing about the higher consultancy costs, and that was coming from the unit operating under-resourced. So what's the status now, and strategically how it's going forward?
So through the chair, at the present time, the role for the contract and sustainability engineer is not filled. We are therefore, continuing to use some consulting support. We are in the middle of the recruitment process and have some interviews next week for that role. We're shortlisted at the moment to 2 candidates. So we are hoping that that role will be filled this calendar year. We have in the next business plan removed quite a substantive sum from the consulting budget, with the expectation that those roles will be filled and will therefore not need to supplement that with the consulting support. Does that answer your question? Yeah.
Thanks. Any issues in future you thinking that need some attention or discussion for the resourcing?
No. What we're planning to do is to run more 2 separate teams for the 2 different business units that I manage. Brad obviously is focused on the NRSBU one, and he'll have additional support. And then obviously the same will occur in the regional landfill business unit. And there will be times and ebbs and flow of requirements where we would get additional support, or there will be reports, etc., that are needing specialist advice. So there will continue to be an ongoing consultancy budget required. But the intent is that we would do the bulk of those things that are in our control in our normal business ourselves, rather than outsource that as we have had to over the last short while.
Thanks. The other one is, if you can quickly brief on the biosolid discharge consent. Are we continuing when it's expiring, and what's the plan if something goes wrong?
So through the chair, we've renewed the biosolids discharge consent, and have we seen the signed document? No, we haven't seen the signed document yet. Our understanding is from Tasman District Council's consenting department that everything is now agreed. The renewal of that consent is for 17 years. It's been decided by the commissioners to link it to the same time frame as the Bell Island wastewater treatment plant, so hence the 17-year time frame. And we did appeal the initial decision. That has now been resolved, but got rid of a couple of conditions that were not workable practically and within the consent, and so that's all been resolved now. So we're comfortable that consent will be, but we'll see it in the near future, the actual signed document.
Thank you. Good work. The other thing is, I note that you talked about Hunter Civil and other contractors, they're getting work. I suspect a significant portion of the spend would be if there is underspend to the capital expenditure, for example, a portion would be coming from the cost savings, and that might include the competitive kind of tendering and or the saving through if it is the same contractor, they don't have to remobilize again, for example. So my question is, are we identifying any cost saving to underpin our underspend?
Through the chair, we've been running a competitive tendering process. We've been focusing on trying to work with the contractors to allow them to fit our works within their work program to give them efficiencies, which has resulted in some significant savings on some of the work items. I don't think that I'll pass over to Brad, that we have had anything major that we have carried forward as a significant underspend. In the last couple of projects, in the first few, that was the case. So,
yeah, thank you through the chair. Of the recent major projects, the Section 5 to 7 works came in, or that was tendered under budget, under what we'd allocated, the engineer's estimate. Unfortunately, the Section 1 to 4 works, which is Beach Road to Saxon Creek, the relining and rehabilitation of the out-of-service pipeline there, ate that up. It was over the engineer's estimate. Competitively tendered. We had pricing from 3 contractors there, it swings and roundabouts. Unfortunately, for a while we were seeing some reasonable external rates coming through, but the market is starting to tighten up again, with contractors finding more work.
Thanks.
That's an interesting comment, because I sit on a tenders panel for Tasman, and we've seen, and I suppose it depends what work you're doing, but we're seeing contractors coming here from out of town now. So I think it would be more competitive than it was 2 years ago.
Through the chair, I think it's related to the specialist nature of the work as well. And this particular 1 to 4 is a pipe re-sleeving, relining project, which is only a few contractors, and none of them are local, really contractors and that specialist expertise. So it's a little bit different than the bulk of the projects we've done, which are local contractors who will dig and lay pipes and do that very well, and obviously have a work program. And if we can fit within their work program, they can get savings and more efficiencies. And that's where we made our gains early in the project. We had one project that was about $500,000 under the engineer's estimate because of the way we worked with the contractors. But in these later ones, I believe the specialist nature of them is affecting the ability to I think the bulk of those things you've been probably talking about are largely pure civil projects. Yeah.
Right. They are. Any other questions from you?
The last question on the safety, I was looking on the incidents as well, and I was making some themes, and I think most of the issues, injuries, or incidents or near misses, they are coming from either mainly from the human factor, and some from the environmental, like the driving incident, where the car went into a hole, and also the human factor for the finger injury from the lid removal. I'm keen to see any safety audits regime in the summarized table from the next time. That should include not only the audits from us, but also from the engaged consultants, and also talking about the human factors, any trainings, just a summary of any trainings as well. Thanks.
Through the chair, I'll let Mr. Nixon talk to that.
Thank you, Mr. Clark. Through the chair, yeah, we can include those in the next report where we can. There's a number of contractors who work for us. The training is all delivered through those contractors, and we'll try and summarise as best we can the information that we're provided.
Right, thanks for that. So any more questions? If not, I need to just check. Would it be appropriate to amend the minutes if we take an apology from Mr. Wilson since he hasn't arrived late? So I'd like to do someone to move Councillor Dallas, seconded Councillor Skinner, that we do receive an apology from Mr. Wilson, because he never misses a meeting. There must have been some hold up. I'll put that. All in favour say aye. Aye.
Aye.
All right. So if there's no other questions, would someone like to move that we receive the manager's report? Move Councillor Skinner, seconded Councillor Pakipaki. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Thank you. And we would ask I'll ask Councillor Pakipaki to close with karakia, and then we'll be done.
Mai ka pai. Tia ki nā te rangi, tia ki nā te hau, tia ki nā te maunga, tia ki nā te moana, tia ki nā te whai o te ao, tia ki nā papātua nuku. Aimea hui e.
Thank you, everyone. Short meeting, simple, but we did have a workshop last week, and we've got to have another little meeting once the other things get approved. But, so thanks, Talent, and I'm sorry that you got caught with the fog when you were halfway here last time.
Yeah, last time I wanted to come, it's just the flights, and I stuck in Auckland. I took the meeting at the airport.
Well, I hope you had a day in Auckland doing something. All right.
Sure. Okay.
Right. Thank you.
See you. Bye.
Bye.